Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. All the Board of Adjustment directors are present. Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Woodbury County Board of Adjustment. Today's date is September 3rd, 2025, and the time is 5 o'clock. Tonight's meeting will be audio taped and the minutes will be prepared. In respect to all parties, we ask that those present turn off cell phones or set them to vibrate. Those in attendance are asked to legibly complete the attendance sheet up on the front table. I'd like to take a moment to review the procedures that the board will follow tonight. First, the board will handle the normal housekeeping agenda items. Then for each application on the agenda, I will open the public hearing on the item. The planning and zoning staff will then present the staff report, including the staff recommendation. Any letters or other communication received from the public prior to the hearing will be entered into the record. The applicant will then have the opportunity to present his or her case and respond to the staff report. Next, we'll hear comments from the public. If you'd like to speak either in support of or against the application, you must come to the microphone. Please state your name and address for the record. All interested parties shall be heard, but repetitious comments should be avoided. Repetitious or irrelevant comments may be ruled out of order by the chair, and I ask you to remain respectful and courteous with your comments at all times. After all public comments have been heard, the staff and applicant may make a closing statement. The hearing shall then be closed by a motion and a vote. Thereafter, no further comments from the staff, public, or applicant may be heard unless asked for by the board. The board shall then deliberate the case and may ask questions of the applicant, staff, or any party offering testimony. However, such questions do not reopen the hearing for additional comments from the public unless so requested or approved by the board. The board will then formulate and vote on a motion, and the motion will either typically grant or deny the requested application. Any board member who has an ex parte communication to place in the record of this meeting should do so prior to the beginning of deliberation of their respective agenda item. Any person desiring to appeal the board's decision to a court of record may do so within 30 days after the filing of this decision with the Planning and Zoning Office. Okay, do we have any public comments on matters not on the agenda? I don't see anything from the floor. Do we have anybody on the phone, Mr. Priestley?
No.
Okay, no one on the phone. Okay, move down to item 4. Unless you have anything beforehand, Mr. Priestley, are we good for now?
Yeah, I think we're good for now. Did we get it in there that everybody's present?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
Okay. I asked now that I guess I would entertain a motion to approve the previous meeting's minutes from the August 4th meeting.
I so move.
Okay, we have a motion by Pam to approve the minutes from the August 4th meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Doyle. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion carries. Okay, I'm going to move down to item 5. The public hearing is now open. And Mr. Priestley, would you read the staff report?
Yes, this is a public hearing for Stephen Sitzman's conditional use permit application to operate a borrow pit for earth materials in order to level the property for future development of a home on his parcel number 894608100010. This particular property, this is much more about positioning the property in a way that would facilitate later on splitting it and building a house. I will point out that this activity had started prior to the conditional use permit application. And quite ironically, you'll remember the Bruce Sorensen application that you worked on last month. When it was identified that this project was out there and it was going forward on an agricultural estate, I talked with the property owner, and the property owner worked very carefully and closely with staff to comply. He stopped the project and carefully monitored the Board of Supervisor proceedings. I believe you even attended a proceeding as far as the Board of Supervisor meeting, as the Board of Supervisors were going through their 3 weeks to amend the ordinance to allow for conditional uses within the agricultural estate. So he was kind of in the same situation Mr. Sorensen was. he applied for the conditional use permit to move toward compliance for this application. What I do have to say about this is staff kind of overloaded the analysis in there, and the zoning commission kind of copied the analysis as far as the presentation to the Board of Adjustment. But technically, this gentleman hit the definition of a borrow pit simply because he wanted to prepare the property for a future house. And the definition of a borrow pit technically is taking the dirt, the earthen material from the property to another site. But his goal is not to just move the dirt down or do a grading. It's a one-off. It's to get through this so that he can get to the next step, split his parcel. And the footprint is basically near or below the 1 acre threshold. And what that means is if it's below the acre threshold, you don't have as many of the requirements that you do at the state level with the DNR. And so this is kind of a little bit larger than just getting a building permit. You know, technically when you get a building permit, you're in good shape to dig your basement, lay your foundation, put everything in, go through that process of development. So ultimately, he's approached the board to get to that step as far as hitting the definition of the borrow pit. So we're kind of at a juncture here where he has to do a conditional use permit and a grading permit with staff and with administratively. So with that said, this is a one-off that needs to spend a few days to get the dirt removed, to get the property to where it needs to be. The recommendation staff kind of put in there was quite heavy on a larger scale. A borrow pit project. I think the key conditions that staff sees as imperative is that we have a cutoff as far as a permit deadline. We have an expectation that he returns the property to a reasonable state in which he wants as far as the grading, that it doesn't create any runoff problems, it gets proper vegetation, everything back to a reasonable level, gets the grade to a reasonable level. But with that said, not meeting the DNR threshold, it would just be expected that he achieves this through the grading permit process. So I would kind of alter some of what I said as far as the staff information, which the zoning commission did support. But I would say you got to have a permit expiration. He's got to be mindful of the erosion control. He had presented a haul route, so generally knowing where the item goes and returning everything back to normal. Hours of operation, haul route and everything, I think it's expected that they operate it, get it done, get the project done. Once it's done, there's no more impact, hopefully on the hours out there. We have not had any written concerns or anything about the project. I did have a individual call the office, leave a message asking about it. I called them, wasn't able to get them live, but I fully explained in my voicemail to them what the scope of this was, meaning a temporary project, and I had not heard back from that individual. So I think considering the facts of this respective case, I think it's real reasonable to recommend a conditional use based on the project that he finishes the grading within a year, has a disciplined timeline to finish the project, and has some type of erosion control, whether getting the vegetation back or using silt fences or hay or something of the traditional nature, but not getting to the DNR threshold where you need an MPDES permit and the full SWIP plan and everything. I think that he's kind of on the border there. I would say if the footprint went up above the acre, as it said in the staff analysis, it's important that that information be complied with. So I would suggest kind of like your typical conditions where you expect that he meets all state and federal, et cetera, regulations, that there's a permit expiration date and erosion control, and those things are met. But otherwise, I think it's a very reasonable application. And that's all I really have. And the applicant is here, so I would recommend hearing from him as well.
Okay, thank you for that analysis, Mr. Priestley. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on behalf of this application? So if you wish to address the board, just give us a quick rundown. You can come up here to the microphone and just state your name and address and let us know what you have.
Steve Sitzman, 1546 110th Street, Sioux City. Basically, all I had was a sloped hill that just continued over. And I've got enough property there. I can split where I'm at now. I've got a house now and it's too big. There's just two of us now. I purchased actually a 3/4 of an acre from a neighbor. So I have enough. I can split that. There's property right there I can build the house on, but and that's why I want to remove enough that I can put the house over there. And basically the hill's just going to move straight back. And that's what we've been doing.
So where are you taking the dirt to?
Pardon?
Where are you taking the dirt to?
I work with contractors in town and I've got one that hauls dirt all the time. He actually tears building down, tears them down here in town stuff. And they're running out of places in town to get dirt. So I said, you need dirt? And he says, yeah. I says, well, you can take all you want there, to a certain point. And it's costing me nothing to have it removed. And it's helping him find dirt. You're gonna be running into that more and more out here in the county, them trying to find dirt. And so it's not costing me anything, so I can't beat that. And this was all arranged before I actually bought the property from the neighbor too, because we couldn't move that much out of there otherwise anyway. So that's what the deal is. And he piles a little bit in town, but most of it he's taken out as he's tearing them down. So we lost all this summer basically from taking dirt out. And so we got a little bit of time for ground freezing now. So it'll still have to continue, after spring comes next year. So.
When are you planning on starting the project on?
On the house,
Yes. Well, on the moving of the
I'm
dirt.
moving the dirt.
Yes.
He's ready to start right now. Like I said, we've been sitting pretty much all summer. We just stopped and he can start moving it. Like I said, it's not going to get moved all by the time winter hits. And then we'll finish it up. I'd like to start building before next winter, if everything goes good.
I guess what kind of estimate do you have left, as far as the timeline of moving the dirt? I mean, is this another month of solid scraping or is it something to be done in like 3 weeks or?
As far as moving the dirt?
Yeah, what's left to move there?
No, it's going to take time. That's why I say he's not going to get it moved before winter starts here. It'll have to come springtime next year to finish it. Because he can only stockpile so much in town on his own place. So, and that's how most of them work. They take it out as they tear buildings down and need to fill them in. This contractor is the one that did the building across here, old Channel 9. We had started on it when we got stopped out there. And so, then it's not feasible for them to move it piled up and then move it again. So it's I'm figuring hopefully by midsummer, I would hope. So I'd say a year anyway, because I would like to start building before winter or I'm not going to get that built until the next year either.
So they'll come in and scrape some, haul it away. And then if wherever they're hauling it to, they're full, then they'll have to stop and wait until they have more openings for
Yes.
dirt usage then. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's not a constant moving trucks and stuff
sure.
out there, it's.
With that being said, do you think that's gonna be hard for you to maintain any kind of, erosion or sediment runoff control? I mean, what do you think of that?
We weren't having a problem till I got stopped. Now I couldn't touch it, so it's got ruts and everything else out there. But yeah, I can clean that all up once I'm told we can start again. In fact, it's gone into weeds and stuff. I sprayed them a couple weeks ago, so the weeds are gonna be taken off right away first thing. What dirt has gone down into the ditch will get cleaned up and rust filled, and then we can, it was just getting to the point where the front part was taken out, where he could put in the silt fence and stuff. Got stopped, so we didn't put silt fence in or anything. So now it's ready to clean up.
Okay, I don't think I have any further questions, so I'll open up to the rest of the board.
So I don't quite understand the route part of this. We're determining what route they can take.
Well, he gave a primary route. As far as if he has multiple routes, I think it'd be important to report that. You did give us a primary where we have to accept that primary, but if you have alternative locations where it's, I think there might be a mechanism where you would want to report or notify the county or notify staff, then we could have a record in the office. Ideally, it'd be nice to have it go to that one location, and that would ultimately be my expectation. But if there is different locations, it would kind of be on you to report back. And if we had a mechanism that was part of the conditional use where they'd have to report it to us, I think that would be helpful.
Is that a requirement to have a route plan?
It's embedded in, it determines on how the board sees it. It's your latitude as far as the criteria. We don't have an enumeration in the ordinance as far as that. It's just traditionally the Board of Adjustment has wanted to see routes. But we don't have, a specific prong in there that it's ultimately required, maybe because of flexibility purposes. And that's why I referenced there that maybe if we require a route or have a route, it's fair to do that, but it's not a direct bullet point, but we just historically have had an interest in routes. We have a road system. We need to know kind of where those trucks are running, the noise, the dust, and different things out there. That's why we're compelled to want to know through the process.
No, I assume, for route, you're talking, they were guessing mostly in the county here, so it's all straight into town to the Highway 75. I'm about 2 miles out from it. And after that, then they will probably take it to different spots in Sioux City, which they have permits taking buildings down and everything like that in there. So city's not gonna have a problem with it all.
If you had to guesstimate how many side dump loads of dirt do you think there is that are required to be hauled out of there?
I have no idea.
I mean,
we're-
yes, how many?
We're talking, they've taken quite a bit out now. It was probably half or 3/4 done when they told me we needed a permit for it. So I'm supposed they're still, I can't say, but probably between 100 and 200 loads yet.
So I guess when you think about that, then it goes back to, that's probably why we need to have a route identified against a lot of truck traffic. So I was just curious.
Is there just one truck then?
Pardon?
Is there just one truck that'll be hauling
Oh,
or?
no, they'll run,
They'll run,
they would run 3 and 4 side dumps,
okay.
at a time when they do. And like I said, they take a building down and they may run them for a couple of days or so and stuff and fill in what they got. And then it might sit for a little bit and they'll do more.
As far as this goes, Mr. Priest, it might be a question for you. As far as the haul route goes, are we kind of just under that, in the Woodbury County realm, and the moment those trucks, go into the city limits, are we kind of off the hook there, and that becomes a city issue, or do we still say, well, okay, even if the haul route goes to the site in Sioux City, we'd still like to know about it? I mean, is that for?
We'd like to generally know about it because in government, people call the office, what are all these trucks? Where are they going? What are they doing? I think it would be fair to have maybe a 24-hour notice or something where you'd reach out to the office and say that I have trucks running. We're going to this address on this road. I think it would be very fair to let us know that if it varies from
No,
what
they
you had.
can give me an address it's going to every time they switch switch around, that's not a problem. I can call you and let you know what that is.
But we'd probably need you to call it in or email it in if that's the way that
Yeah,
they chose. It's just one of those things where when we talk haul routes with these boards and everything, knowing where A to B is definitely essential when you have a permit, an open permit out there. And I fully understand, you know, the uniqueness of may need some dirt here, may need some dirt there. And so that kind of ends up being, you know, very loose without, you know, the specifics there. But if there was a mechanism where, okay, you're going to have alternative routes, you would just need to report it back so that we have something on file if we're, because yeah, across the board, our office is the conduit. We get information, we receive complaints. And so
Yeah.
if you have that on file and I'm saying, well, it looks like, yeah, they notified us that they're running this down to this address in Sioux City and they're running on Floyd Boulevard or whatever, we have that on file to bring clarity, because ultimately conditional use is a transparent process that we need to know the whole scope. So
So with that, Mr. Priestley, then, what do you think, your office would prefer? Would you prefer, I'm just trying to streamline this for this gentleman. Would you prefer the phone call and say, hey, this is our haul route today, or would you prefer the email route? I mean, what would be more of a?
well, I think as far as something that says that maybe we need a 24 to 48 hour notification ahead of time, so that we have something so that you put a communication mechanism in there. I think ultimately I can work with the property owner as far as the transparency. I need you to report to me where that's at in due time. So if your contractor reports to you and says, okay, I'm moving this off the site, I'd expect you to give me a call. And I know Steve and I've called back and forth a lot as far as this application. You've been good about communicating about this application. So I would at minimum expect some, you know, that rapport to continue versus, you know, finding out later that, oh, the trucks were running here and we did not know. I just, for the purpose of public transparency, we need something on file in the office.
Okay,
that
well, I
says-
usually know the day before he'll call and say, hey, we're gonna be taking dirt out.
But ideally, I'd like you to run me up a map.
Well, yeah,
or
yeah,
something.
so I'll just talk to him, tell him, let me know the day before, I'll let you know and give you an address where they're going.
Probably a good 48 hours allows us room to figure that
Okay.
out. I imagine they're not just on the fly coming out and gonna take it, but I imagine I would personally expect to kind of individually know when this is occurring. And also, since it's kind of sporadic and not all happening at once, they have the ability to condition that no hauling after, like, let's say 6 PM or 7 PM or, you know, certain things like that
Yeah,
too, at the basis of
they
your
don't.
property. So if, for example, you notify us that, okay, we're running next Thursday, it'll probably happen between 8 AM to whatever, that's the essence of a conditional use permit, that we know what's going out there for transparency during that time frame. So ultimately, a permit expiration date, when it's all said and done, your goal, I'm sure you want to get it done as soon as possible.
Right.
And then number two is if they're coming out to haul, notify us 48 hours or so beforehand and tell us what the haul route is and the time frame you're doing it that day. So some type of curfew would be helpful. And I'm sure your people want to be done with it at two to go home with their families and stuff. So
Yeah,
There-
they
there's-
just, they start at 7:30 getting their trucks, so they're usually not out there till 8 or 8:30, and then they quit, usually by 3:30, so.
So I would just ask that you think about that, and I'd kind of present that to the board to consider as well.
Well, do we really need the final destination of where that dirt goes?
We need the route. We need to know generally where it's going. I mean, it's helpful if the trucks are on the road or, why are those out there on that route? So generally, we need to know the route. So I think it's fair if you have an address or something, you're to report that to us.
Yeah, that's not a problem. Like I said, every time they're tearing something down or doing something, they gotta have permit in the city anyway
Yeah.
for it, so.
Yeah.
So that's not a problem.
I know how those guys work, but 48 hours is a long time for those guys to think ahead.
Yeah, it is. You don't know on the weather and stuff and how things are going. That's why I say, I
Sometimes
know
8
the day
hours.
before, I know I can get it out, but I'll try. I'll tell them I want it a couple
Well,
days, but
24, 48 hours,
Yeah.
something that's
Yeah.
reasonable.
That's right, potentially differ just with, Mr. Priestley is, being from the ag background, I understand it might be, the dirt might be dry 1 minute and wet the
Yeah,
next,
Yeah.
so
exactly.
I'd ask maybe if staff was okay with 24 hours, would that be workable? Cause I get the tight window on,
I'm fine with what the Board of Adjustment tells me what to do.
Well,
So-
I think if you could tell them before the business day, I think you'd be doing pretty good myself.
oh yeah,
I
there's
thought-
no reason we can't the day before because they're
Yeah.
planning what they're gonna do. And if it rains, we know they're not, but
Whatever the board finds reasonable, this as long as we know about it as it's occurring.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, because basically they're gonna go out on this road and they're gonna go west.
Yeah.
That's really the only direction they're gonna have.
yeah, they're gonna
You're
go
gonna enter-
into town and that's it.
You're not far off the corporate line anyway, so you're going
No.
right into the city.
No.
So
okay, does anyone else on the board have any further questions for Mr. Sitzman?
So do you know what final grade, what altitude or whatever on the
Yeah,
map?
there's a house and shed on the property next to it. It's all gonna be same grade. I couldn't tell you what that is, but yeah.
Yeah, and just for the record too, he'll be filing, one of our grading permits are basically there's no charge to them.
Okay,
They're typically a catch-all from when the DNR, but he's at that unique situation. He's just kind of hovering right below the threshold. So that's kind of even, ideally, you've got your site plan and your general footprint and everything. So you just file that document. And staff would basically oversee the conditions that the board would ultimately choose. So those two things kind of play together. But ultimately, on borrow pits, it's usually, we defer a lot of it to the state. But because we don't have the state as involved, there's definitely a lot of latitude, and ultimately staff appreciates and understands he's trying to go from point A to point B to build a house. And in my book, it's sort of one of the steps to get your building permit accomplished. And it hit a borrow pit because the dirt's going elsewhere. But otherwise, if he's just rotating it on the property, we know that's a whole different scenario. So I think the conditions can be reasonable, but hopefully reflect the project in a way that it's a real practical project that he attempts to get done. This isn't a perpetual borrow pit, and it probably won't be ran like it. It's to get from point A to point B. So I would probably suggest being mindful of the conditions that it is a development project to get something accomplished.
Any further questions for Mr. Sitzman? You have anything further for us?
No,
Okay,
thank you.
yep, thank you. I guess at this time, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing on this agenda item.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Turner to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second by Mr. Philippi. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Yeah, that motion carries. I'll now open it up to discussion amongst us, the directors. I think this is probably pretty straightforward. It looks like we're just here to solve a problem. I understand the timeline of winter coming and not being able to move dirt, things like that. Some things I had, kind of taken out of this. I think it's reasonable for us to, ask him to adhere to the 1-year permit timeline, which I think he definitely wants to have his construction going before that anyway. I think if we ask to return the property to a reasonable state and condition, that's fair, and I'm sure he'll do that. Also, I would mention control erosion, sediment runoff, and weeds, which it sounds like he has done and is doing. And then the other thing I wrote down was notify planning and zoning of haul route changes, within a 24-hour advance. But Mr. Turner, you had mentioned one business day. I guess that's up for discussion here on what we set there.
Yeah, I would just make it as long as it's the day before. Would be the way I would look at it, because we don't want to slow it down.
No, I agree. So, and another disclaimer, we always throw on these borrow permits just from historical, times we've done this is that, this conditional use permit would be subject to state and federal regulations, but I don't think we're going to run into that here because of the size of it. So,
I think it's fair to put that on there, just in this,
Mhm.
because if you go over the acre, then you basically call the Spencer office and apply for their MPDES #2 permit and have a SWIP plan, which is a stormwater pollution prevention plan, which captures the whole erosion control aspect of it. So if you put the state and federal,
subject
whatever,
to state and federal
I
regulations.
think that would take care of that whole picture of going higher anyhow.
So then we're covered.
I think that'd be a important part of it.
Okay.
And you aren't putting the topsoil off to the side and then respreading it.
Could you come up to the microphone? I hate to interrupt you, but we got to record this.
This is when the house was still built, or originally built, the house and the shed that's there. There ain't much topsoil on there, but what little bit there was, I mean, you were talking inches. Most of it's been peeled off and there's a
Yeah,
little
so-
pile for
So you're
that.
not making a pile and leaving that there to spread it back out over the
There's a
top.
small pile we're leaving, but it's not gonna amount to much.
Okay.
But I am gonna keep what I can.
Yeah.
I wanna put grass in there again and so I'm gonna have to do, it won't grow anything. It's that the old loam and clay.
Yeah,
And
I know
I'm
what
gonna-
it is.
Yeah, so.
I guess, does anyone else on the board have any further comments on our deliberation here for a potential motion? I guess I'll open it up amongst us for somebody to make a potential motion. Someone has some ideas.
Well, I think we should approve it based on our list of items that we want to include.
Would it help, Pam, if I pass this down just so you guys see what I wrote and see? You can read my scribbling there.
I think that pretty well includes it. I mean, it sums it up. Good there, everybody.
Mr. Priestley, I guess this is a question for you. Is it out of order for the chair to make a motion on this?
You could, typically chairs defer to others, but you could.
Sure. Is there someone on the board that would like to make a potential motion?
I would move to accept, to grant this permit. And the wording, where's the wording at? That we need to say in that first part of it, with all the parcel number, you've got to include all that, right?
As far as the application, yeah, you could include to approve the conditional use permit request with Mr. Sitzman as far as his property on parcel number 894608100010. So we can let the record reflect that that's what we're working on as when we opened up the application. So I think your motion can capture that as far as the app we're on. So.
So we wouldn't have to necessarily label the parcel number. We could just say we would like to approve this conditional use permit for Mr. Sitzman.
Because that's the essence of the agenda item. So
Sure.
we're on it. So your motions will trigger the permit and the expectations for the permit. So, well, we're within the scope of that, because when we write these resolutions, we always name in the very beginning that Steven Sitzman has applied for a conditional use permit before the Board of Adjustment on parcel number, and then we enter that section, township, range, agricultural estates zoning district. So that would automatically be reflected in the resolution based on this being an application or agenda item before the Board of Adjustment.
What do you think of this, Pam? You started with that. You can go ahead and read. See
Okay.
what you think there if we did that. And if you want to pass this down to someone else, it's fine with me. Only thing I edited here was the one business day that Mr. Turner had talked to.
Advance. Yeah. I think
And
that,
Daniel, if you could read those out, and then Pam could kind of point to those as far as kind of, I think if we verbally say them and then work them into the Pam's motion, I think that would be the approach.
Okay. So, like I had mentioned earlier, I think, if we did make a motion to approve this conditional use permit, with the following conditions, that we would, that he would adhere to the 1-year permit timeline, return the property to a reasonable state and condition, control erosion, sediment runoff and weeds, establish a vegetation cover when needed, and notify planning and zoning if the haul route changes 1 business day in advance, and also be subject to state and federal regulations.
Mhm.
So I think Pam.
so I move to approve the conditional use permit for Mr. Sitzman with the conditions stated by Daniel.
That's fair.
That'll work for staff. Okay. Pam has made the motion to approve the conditional use permit. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Turner. Is there any further discussion on this?
The only comment I would add is that year would be contingent on the date that the chair signs it. That's a normal procedure when a permit is issued. So the date Daniel or Pam, whoever signs it, that'll be the year.
So the 1-year permit timeline will start the day that the permit is signed.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, we have a second by Mr. Turner. Was there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Yeah, that motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, I'll be in touch with you in the next couple days. We've got to do some administrative work as far as getting the resolution written, which ends up being the essence of your permit. And so once that's signed and issued, I'll have to talk to you about that grading permit as well. So I'll be calling you and we'll work things out in the next few days. So.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to move down to item 6. Are there any public comments on matters not on the agenda?
No one on the phone?
Someone on the phone? Okay. I'll move down to item 7. Do we have a staff update?
Yeah, very briefly, there's a lot going on with the zoning commission next month. The Board of Supervisors directed the zoning commission to look at public service garages as a potential ordinance amendment for allowing conditional uses in the agricultural preservation. The logic behind that is that's our most predominant zoning district out there. It's also the district that surrounds many of our cities. And a lot of times public service garages are very close to cities. And for example, if we look at the the secondary roads departments, historically, they're put on limited industrial zoning districts. Many of those county sheds that have been put out there, they were out there before the ordinance. And when I don't have the specific dates on every one, so I'll say that it's assumed that most of them were out there before the ordinance, or at least under the Red Book ordinance. And so the situation with a comprehensive plan is this. It's tough to rezone to a limited industrial when much of our comp plans have agricultural areas surrounded. So the most practical route is to look at conditional use permits. And so the supervisors recognize the fact that comprehensive plans play a huge role as far as the zoning and the outlook. And so it makes more sense to look at the conditional use, which I like to call the maybe permit, on whether a public service garage could be at certain locations or not, as scrutinized by the Board of Adjustment. So zoning commission will be looking at that as a recommendation over to the Board of Supervisors to see if that's something the community wants to look at doing. The second thing that I have is zoning commission's looking at revisiting accessory dwelling units again, or putting the cap on the 1,000 square foot, as well as when it was passed. I jumped really fast, want to meet zoning code and state code, that when we passed it, we adopted it, and we're a county without building codes. And the regulation says that we have to treat them exactly the same way that we treat our single family dwellings, your primary house. Well, there's a discrepancy there, because if you adopt the version of state code says that it must follow building code. And so we're not equipped to be a building code county like many of the 99 counties across. And so talking with Joshua Widman and County Attorney's Office, we need to go back in and fix it as far as applying an exemption that's actually part of it, because you can exempt out. And that's how counties that don't have building codes do it, as far as not following the international building code. If you had a building code, you would need a very expanded department and an apparatus and building inspectors, et cetera. We're not set up for that. And with our budget and all the different things that the state does to us all the time, we always have to be very mindful of the dollars and everything. So we're one of the many counties that do not have building codes, on top of the flexibility for landowners to do what they need to do to build their structures in unincorporated Woodbury County. The other thing that they're going to be looking at is through the years, there's little issues that we find in the ordinance. Whether there was an old reference that I found that the telecommunication towers wasn't pointing correctly to the notification section earlier on. We tried to fix that under the nuclear side, but it didn't fall within the scope. So we're coming back under housekeeping to fix it. The irony is that the telecommunication towers already talks about notification distances, so there was never any problem with the ordinance. It's just that the numbers didn't link up right. The other thing we're going to look at is telecommunication towers. As you know, many of you permitted several of them through the years. State code bars us from forcing co-location. Our ordinance requires co-location. State law takes precedent on telecommunication towers. So we're going to do a housekeeping measure to remove that part of the ordinance that is not compliant. Then there's a couple other areas in there that don't point to the right section. There's a road use agreement. It says 6.1. It's not fatal to how the ordinance operates, but we need to clean up some references in there. And I think that was in the solar section. So that's a little bit of mop up there. But overall, we want to go through the ordinance and just make sure that everything in it historically is clean and makes sense and follows through the intent. So these housekeeping items are not to change policy. They're just to make sure that everything is flowing the way it should flow. The next one the zoning commission has is they have actually just a subdivision and a rezone coming up, which is your typical AP to AE, where somebody's going to split in a house out there by lot. And so anyway, lots going on. As far as you know, I think we probably reported last month, the nuclear zoning ordinance amendments had passed as well. Just to state that for the record. But zoning commission, of course, looks forward to going into this endeavor as well to public service garages and these various housekeeping items. So just want you to be aware. Again, the Board of Adjustment doesn't have an approval process for amending ordinances, but you all operate under the ordinance, so you're a big part of it that way. So it's important to always stay informed.
I guess so the one question I'd have on that, Dan, when you refer to public service garage, I guess what does that entail?
It could be anything that's government sponsored or government related that falls under a government related department or agency, just regardless of the level. If the DOT had some type of facility they wanted, if the county engineer wanted additional locations around the community to serve the system. So usually it's something that has a governmental purpose, hence the word public. It's not a private service garage or a private industry. It is fully for government use that serves the people of our state and our county. And you can't get more clear on it for a secondary roads, because you think about what they do with the grading, the maintenance, the snow plows, the fixing of the trucks, and even the gravel and the concrete portion, or I should just go back to gravel, but the major functions that your secondary roads department does to serve your road system, they have to have a place to, hang their tools.
Is there anything in the ordinance there, I guess, about, guiding the choice of where those go? And the only reason I bring that up is, because I see like the Siouxland Regional Transit System, garages out there on Highway 20. I think it's that or whatnot that I'm thinking of, but I see that kind of stuff going out there, and what I would think would be, prime tourist land, along Highway 20 corridors and such like that. Is there anything that regulates, maybe we set those and not those areas and not such prime locations, for the advancement of Woodbury County? Or
I think the merits of putting a C in there comes down to the localized scrutiny of the process. Somebody brings a good plan in, does the plan fit or not? And it goes down ultimately to the scope. And the conditional use is probably one of our most flexible tools as far as being able to be somewhat compliant. And the reason I use somewhat compliant is we have lists of what is compliant and what is not compliant. And a lot of times we learn a lot about compliance based on who lives in the area, as much as the ordinance itself. So we play those off through this very process that we went through tonight. And so I think you bring up good points. Maybe you get an application later on. We have a room full of the public that's actually pointing out inadequacies to a location. The Board of Adjustment is the guardian of those locations. Some locations might be very perfect for AP, and some locations will be absolutely strongly staunch against. The big difference here is, in going into this and allowing it, is creating the maybe scenario. And I think that anytime you lead up to a project, the applicants, the government agencies need to do their due diligence on shopping the areas, understanding the areas, even talking to the cities. I think you're going to see public service garages probably pop up closer to the edge of an incorporated property than you are out in the middle of AP, where you're further away from things. And so the smell test is going to be how the city councils feel, how the city public feels, and of course the unincorporated residents that are in the immediate boundary there. So yeah, you raise good points, and there's shops that may not very well be suitable. And so it's just that individualized evaluation. So yes, the board can say no.
okay, thank you for that explanation, Mr. Priestley. Did you have anything else for us then?
I think we're good
Okay.
for now. If anything ever pops up, I would send an email that explains the situation, but those are the predominant things. And zoning commission's meetings will be September 22nd, 5 o'clock in this very room.
Okay, with that update from Mr. Priestley, is there any board member comment or inquiry?
I just noticed that the nuclear plant in Iowa is going to be coming back online, that they voted to bring that back online. I thought that was interesting.
Very fascinating. It's definitely state debate, but it's a debate at the federal level as well. And watching the way the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and some of these sites, and I think as the essence of the debate that has been in Woodbury County over the last year, and it'll continue to be, I think, is the fact that communities are having to look at the energy needs in different ways. There's lots of different perspectives on that, but fueling and powering this 21st century United States of America requires much more resources. And that's definitely, I think, a reaction what's happened there in Iowa for sure.
So one of the things that I like, this is a pet peeve of mine, doesn't really have to do with this, but when you see these driveways this close together on these roads, that we're making a city street out of a country road. And these are farm to market roads. I hate these things with a passion because you've got semis going up and down these roads all the time. And they're treating them like a city street. And they're just a safety hazard is all they are.
And you bring up a good point for the change to a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit.
See it, and I don't agree with that either. Because when you change that to 35 miles per hour, then all you do is you route traffic other ways that are less safe. We need to stop allowing these people either do something on the driveways where they have to have a frontage road or do something so that they're not treating these rural farm to market roads as city streets.
Yep. And that's a huge debate in itself, but that's the common thing. Somebody finds a tract of land right near the hard surface.
Yep.
And that's where
Because otherwise you end up with 35 miles per hour all the way across the county. And I'm sorry, if you want to live in the country, get off the blacktop. That's part of living in the country.
Yep.
Just don't get stuck. Did I say that? I wasn't referring to anybody, but
I'm gonna withhold comment.
I guess with that, looking down at item 9, is there anybody that would like to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Turner to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay, seconded by Pam. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, guys.